anyway.
Oh my God. I'm glad you noticed. Pretty much every morning, and John will attest to this, I would come, and John had this trailer. I would come into the trailer, I would take the script, I would throw it across the room. John would say, "Good morning, Robert." I say, "Good morning, John." He'd say, "I take it you don't think that the script for today is very good. Would you like to perhaps rewrite it?" I'd be sitting there. Then Gwyneth would come in and be like, "Oh my God, are you guys doing this again? Are we going to shoot before lunch?" And Terrence would come in and
Jeff Bridges would have prepared the script, his scene in the script for 2 months because he likes to prepare. He doesn't like change.
Yeah.
So Robert would come in with new pages, and Jeff would have all his lines memorized and his notes on the other side of his script. And that was my job as a director, was to balance all of these different styles of performing.
And then Terrence would say, "Listen, I think the Department of Defense is going to have a problem if Tony Stark and Rhodey are drinking on the plane, but I found out that as long as it's 12 hours bottle to throttle, we can make the military happy." And I go, "Great, so we can drink in the scene, right?" And he's going, "Listen, Downey." And we talked a lot about how we wanted to not just do this, but in the off chance that it had the kind of reception that we're finding it does, then how can we set things up so we can carry them to another level if we get to do a couple more of these? We take it real serious. It was funny. I felt like we were doing a $150 million independent movie, which is I think why some of our sensibilities really were able to be to bear fruit.
I'll start with the easy part of the question, which is, are heroes made or are they born? I think that the more compelling version, clearly in comic books you have two different types of stories. One is when magical powers arrive magically on the hero. A spider bites a person, a gamma ray hits them, and then they find themselves with these powers and they have to figure out how to deal with them. To me, the more compelling story, the more ancient myth is the story of the coming of age of somebody who decides to become a hero. They go through some challenges or a change or are awakened on a spiritual level, and then the metaphor for that reawakening becomes this new heroic persona that they take on. And in the case of Iron Man, it goes beyond that because he has no superpowers. He actually builds a suit. He reinvents himself. And in the case of this movie, actually changes his heart, literally. And that was as a filmmaker, it was a very simple, specific storyline to cling to as we made the movie more complex with improvisation, comedy, and special effects.
Very good answer.
Thank you.
It was a very good answer.
Did anybody read comic books growing up?
No.
Terrence?
I read Hustler comics.
That'll take a minute and then you'll laugh.
No, I read some. I read X-Men comics when I was younger, and a little bit of Spider-Man, for the most part.
We would just keep thinking about scenes like this. Like there's this big action sequence where Rhodey and Tony, Rhodey's realizing that Tony might be, and then there's this fight with these F-22 Raptors, and it tends to be the parts in movies where my brain turns off because I know that the effects houses are now doing everything, and maybe there's some ADR, and so we often talked about how to keep the relationships alive and how to keep some humor and repartee in it, and simultaneously, and Gwyneth hasn't actually seen the movie in its finished form, but I'm really looking forward to sitting near her when there's the scene where she comes down and Tony asks her how big her hands are, and then they have this kind of wild scene that you wouldn't expect to see in a movie like this that's so metaphoric for what they mean to each other, and yet it's this thing where she's changing his heart for him. And I'm hoping that what we really did was we built our own version of how to tell a story like this, and it kept coming back to these really simple truths about relationships and finding out who we are and who each other are and trying to reconcile that.
Well, I think that, how shall I begin? I think that what we do as actors is that we're channels in a way. You know, we have our brains and our thoughts and our ideas about things. But when we're acting, there's something that comes from somewhere else. And I always think of it that, you know, we're a channel. We're bringing emotion. We're kind of translating something, and that the rest of the world is able to be moved or to understand something, hopefully, by what we're doing. And I think without spirituality, without some kind of link to whatever that magnificent force is that we're channeling, our work would be limited. So I think it's important, for me anyway. I don't know about these clowns over here.
Spirituality is, everything is based upon, you know, physics, but there has to be a balance to physics. You know, they say no matter touches each other, so what is that space in between it? What is the space that the electrons swim within? You know, what is the space between that actors, what motivates us? You know, what is that impetus? You know, it has to be something non-tangible, but something that's felt. You know, and I've seen a lot of people try to be actors, but I've met very few actors. You know, in this film, everyone was actors, which enabled us to take a script that didn't feel necessarily right, but to know what it should feel like and not be afraid to find it. And for John to be able to say, okay, you guys are headed in the right direction, let me lead you the rest of the way. You know, that is the spirituality of it, because it's about telling the truth so that people will ultimately be able to relate to what we're doing. And they cannot relate unless it is truthful, and truth comes from spirituality, I believe. Thanks.
There was also this. No, that was really good, man. There was also this this feeling on the set of that we were all leading these very simple lives, and we're all making these sacrifices. It was a very, very, very disciplined time for John and I and Gwyneth and Terrence, and it was this very kind of, I don't know how to say it, but it was almost like this kind of like monastic mode we were in, where we were just working really diligently, and we were staying late and talking about scenes afterwards. It didn't feel like that kind of clock-punching big
Never tired
Hollywood machine, yeah. And it really was energizing us, because we realized that, you know, without tuning our own horns, we were kind of doing something a little bit differently. You know, we had all this machinery and all this this energy behind us to do this like huge project, and we were treating it, we were almost talking about it in whispers sometimes. We were really connecting with each other emotionally. It's just so funny too, because you think about a movie like this, and when I see these movies, I imagine they're going to be very two-dimensional, and that people are just kind of showing up and grabbing a paycheck, and we really were trying to, and John and I are very similar in the way we met, and kind of our hearts, we kind of really wanted to pour that sense of a spiritual transition and somewhat of an awakening into Tony, and have the message of the film not have some subtlety in it, you know, and I hope that comes across. By the way, we were really nervous in coming to Europe and coming to Italy, because I've been here before, where they're like, Robertino, that movie was so terrible. Why do you not do movies that are good? Come on, you're town. What are you doing with these pigs? And so we were quite apprehensive, to tell you the truth, and I'm not saying I'm speaking for all of you, but we were getting some feedback last night, and it put us at ease a little bit to know that people weren't hating Iron Man.